Grand Marshal Voron Talek stood at the central viewport of the Imperial flagship Vindicator, watching the Hellion frontier unfold in a tapestry of quiet stars. Calm, orderly, empty, exactly how he preferred his conquests. The frontier's mining colonies clung to a scatter of asteroids beneath a pale nebula, fragile and unaware of the storm advancing toward them. Behind him, officers moved in precise arcs, their movements as synchronized as their training demanded. No panic. No noise. Only discipline. Grand Marshal, an adjutant reported. The suppression fleet is fully assembled. 400 vessels, all systems nominal. We await your signal. Talek nodded once. Transmit the standard ultimatum. The adjutant saluted and carried out the command. Within seconds, a pre-recorded directive surged across the frontier. Attention, human settlements. By decree of the Galactic Empire, you are hereby claimed. Submit or be purged. Talek expected the usual replies, pleas, threats, the occasional colonial militia declaring defiance before being silenced. He'd conquered dozens of worlds. The script never changed. But no response came. Only static. He frowned. They have communications. They received our message. Perhaps they're frightened, sir, the adjutant offered. No, Talek said quietly. Humans never stay silent. They talk even when they shouldn't. He turned back toward the stars. An uneasy ripple shifted beneath his composure. Something felt misaligned, out of pattern. A whisper of uncertainty brushed the bridge. Earth Command, Black Operations Wing. Commander Rhea Calder skimmed her gloves across the smooth inner surface of the Revenant's cockpit. The craft hummed beneath her touch, alive in a way no machine should be. It was sleek, matte, and nearly impossible to track, humanity's most dangerous secret wrapped in experimental alloys and classified physics. A holographic display flickered, outlining the Imperial fleet's trajectory toward the frontier colonies. 400 ships, she muttered. All that for a handful of miners. Not miners, replied Director Yates through the calm. They're humans. And the Empire doesn't plan to stop there. Rhea lowered herself into the pilot's cradle. The Revenant's systems recognized her instantly, adapting to her neural patterns with a soft pulse of light. I'll intercept, she said. Alone. One craft against an armada. But hesitation never crossed her features. You're not expected to win, Yates said quietly. Just buy time. Rhea smirked. When have I ever cared about what's expected? The cradle sealed around her. The stars outside warped as the Revenant prepared for its first combat sortie. Godspeed, Commander, Yates said. Rhea whispered back. Let's make history regret meeting humans. And she launched. Hellion Frontier, Imperial Fleet. Talek's flagship detected the distortion first, a brief flicker, like starlight bending around an invisible edge. It appeared and vanished too quickly for sensors to lock on. The bridge crew stiffened. Was that a cloaked vessel? An officer asked. Cloaking doesn't bend stars, another murmured. Talek raised a hand. Run full-spectrum diagnostics. The scanners swept the region, infrared, quantum lattice, gravimetric. Nothing. Talek's unease grew sharper. What do the colonies report? Still silent, the adjutant replied. No distress signals. No transmissions of any kind. Humans are impulsive, Talek muttered. Their silence suggests preparation. He didn't like preparation. Continue advance. Engage if resistance. The ship lurched. Not violently, just enough that every officer on the bridge felt the structural tremor. Report! Talek barked. A sensor technician blurted out. Something moved through our outer formation, sir. Moved through? Yes, between destroyer wings Alpha and Gamma. High velocity. Unreadable profile. Minimal signature. Talek narrowed his eyes. Identify it. We're trying, sir. The readings are inconsistent, like the object's position is splitting. Talek turned sharply. Objects do not split. This one is doing something. The technician swallowed. Should I magnify visual? Do it, Talek ordered. The viewport shifted, zooming toward the disturbance. Black space glimmered, and then a shape emerged, fading into view like a ghost dragged from nothing. A single craft. Small, angular, almost predatory. Its hull shimmered with an afterimage that lingered a heartbeat too long, as though space itself struggled to keep track of it. Origin? Talek snapped. Another officer cross-referenced databases. Unknown configuration, wait. Matching partial fragments from human scout vessels. Sir, that is a Terran craft. Silence hit the bridge like a gravitational wave. One human ship. Against 400 Imperial war vessels. Talek's lip curled. Arrogant creatures. They dare send one? Perhaps it's a message, an officer suggested. Then let it be a short one. Talek straightened his armor. Prepare annihilation beams. Target the intruder. Before the command could travel the length of the fleet, the Revenant flickered, vanished, and reappeared kilometers inside the Imperial formation. Reacquire! Shouted the technicians. We can't. It's moving faster than our scanner's update. It's skipping, no jumping, micro-warp bursts. Talek felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Concern. He watched the strange craft tear through the outer perimeter with impossible agility. Destroyers shifted, adjusting their lock-on sequences, but the intruder's movements violated every tactical model. It danced. That was the only word that fit. Inside the Revenant, Rhea sank deeper into the Neuralink. The craft responded instantly, amplifying her reflexes, mirroring her thoughts. Data streams mapped enemy ship trajectories, highlighting vulnerabilities with surgical precision. Empire formation is rigid, she muttered. Predictable. Good. A squadron of interceptors broke formation, angling toward her. Rhea exhaled. Let's give them something to remember. She triggered a micro-warp skip. The universe hiccuped. The Revenant surged forward, no distortion trail, no warning, materializing behind the interceptors. Her weapons system released a burst of kinetic rods, each one streaking forward with electromagnetic charge. 3 interceptors disintegrated before they realized the attack had begun. Hostile craft just destroyed multiple interceptors, an Imperial officer cried. Move to encirclement pattern Delta. It keeps slipping out of lock. Delta is too slow, it's already behind us. Talek's jaw tightened. Silence! The bridge stilled. He pointed at the Revenant on the tactical display, its icon flickering like a glitch. That craft is not a threat by itself, he said. It is a distraction. Humans are luring us into a trap. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Talek continued. Humans lack the numbers to challenge us. They rely on theatrics and unpredictability. Hold formation. But, sir, the adjutant ventured, their craft just breached Wing Gamma. If we don't react... Talek spun on him. We do not break discipline for a single insect. Rhea's voice crackled onto the comm grid, hijacking the Imperial broadcast channel. Insect? She said. Interesting choice of metaphor. But here's the thing. Her tone sharpened, soft yet cutting. Insect swarm. Talek stared at the speaker. Rhea whispered. I'm just the first one you'll notice. Static erupted as she cut the line. Talek's fingers clenched around the railing. So the humans want to provoke fear? No, sir, an officer murmured, staring in horror at fresh sensor readings. They want to break us. On the tactical display, the Revenant vanished again, only to reappear directly above an Imperial cruiser, its hull glowing with rising energy. Talek's heart dropped. Brace! Light engulfed the viewport. And the first Imperial cruiser detonated. The shockwave from the destroyed cruiser washed across the Vindicator's shields, rattling the bridge. Officers scrambled to regain balance. Consoles flickered, throwing shards of red light across strained faces. Grand Marshal Talek braced against the impact, fury radiating beneath his controlled exterior. One human craft, he hissed. Just erased a vessel crewed by 8,000 Imperials. Sensor alarms pulsed again. Grand Marshal, the intruder is moving. The officer didn't finish. The Revenant reappeared on the tactical map for less than a heartbeat before slipping away, leaving only scrambled readings and a ghostly afterimage. Rhea Calder was no longer testing them. She was dismantling them. Talek forced his voice steady. All ships, initiate perimeter collapse. Bring wings Delta and Zeta inward. Box it in. His command echoed fleet-wide, and hundreds of warships maneuvered into a tightening sphere. Their formation, drilled through centuries of military doctrine, moved with cold precision. We have it contained, an officer said, regaining confidence. Talek didn't share it. This enemy hadn't followed any predictable path so far. Do not underestimate human improvisation, he warned. Inside the Revenant. Rhea skimmed the Revenant sideways through a slit of warp space, emerging between two cruisers now turning to face her. She caught a glimpse of their weapons charging, glowing like coiled suns. Empire finally woke up, she murmured. The Neuralink pulsed in agreement, mapping a lattice of firing arcs across her HUD. She felt the pressure, hundreds of beams aligning, forming a cage. Let's break their box. She kicked the Revenant into a sharp dive and fired a pair of EMP bursts. Blue-white pulses rippled outward, shorting an entire cruiser's shield arrays. Sparks erupted along its hull as its systems failed one by one. Rhea cut through the gap before the ship could block her path. Behind her, two destroyers collided while trying to adjust to her abrupt maneuver. Their shields flared, scraped violently, and then failed. Metal folded inward like wet paper. Rhea didn't look back. Imperial flagship bridge. Chaos rippled through the Imperial comm channels. Wing Delta reporting heavy damage. Wing Zeta requesting emergency reformation. Multiple ships firing out of sequence. Weapon calibration off by 3 degrees. Destroyer H-12 just hit friendly cruiser Vessar. Talek slammed his fist onto the railing. Maintain discipline. Where is the intruder now? Everywhere, one of the sensor officers admitted. It's skipping across our perimeter faster than we can predict. The micro-warp bursts are destabilizing our formation. Stabilize it, Talek snapped. We're trying, sir. But its movements aren't linear. It changes direction before re-entering normal space. Talek's eyes narrowed. You're telling me the craft violates conservation of motion? I'm telling you it doesn't care. For the first time, murmurs spread across the bridge, quiet, fearful, unprofessional. Rhea struck again before Talek could silence them. This time, a flash erupted near Wing Zeta. The tactical display tracked a kinetic impact. An alloy rod slammed into the drive core of a battlecruiser. The ship tore itself apart, its disintegration blooming outward like an inverted nova. Another one, lost, the adjutant whispered. Talek felt the humiliation like a blade pressed against his spine. Patch me through fleet-wide, he commanded. The channel opened. This is Grand Marshal Talek. You will hold formation. You will obey my commands without hesitation. We do not bow to fear, and we do not yield to primitives. The intruder is not omnipotent. It is simply fast, too fast for fragmented thinking. Execute directives precisely. His tone steadied the fleet. But then, the Revenant sliced directly underneath the Vindicator, passing so close that its gravitational wake rattled the hull. Talek gripped the rail, knuckles widening. That was not an attack. That was a message. Back to the Revenant. Rhea grinned. Got your attention, didn't I? The Revenant's warning indicators lit up. Enemy vessels were converging, tightly controlled now, focused, guided by Talek's iron influence. She respected the adjustment. The Empire had discipline, if not creativity. Let's see how they handle chaos, she said softly. She accelerated, full burn. The Revenant became a streak of distorted light, leaving arcs of ionized space trailing behind. With a twist of her wrist, she angled toward a wall of battleships attempting to converge. Target their confidence, she muttered. Break the pattern, break the Empire. She triggered a sequence of microskips, tiny, controlled warps that cast a cascade of sensor echoes. Her craft split into dozens of apparent signatures. Imperial ships fired blindly, beams slicing through false positions. A cruiser struck its own escort. A destroyer volley grazed a battleship. Rhea weaved through the chaos, dropped a gravitational spike beneath another cruiser, and sent it spiraling off-axis. Phones rang, officers shouted, alarms screamed across the fleet. The formation, once a symbol of Imperial perfection, warped into a spiraling, fractured mess. Imperial flagship, breaking point. Formation integrity is collapsing. Gravity well destabilized, ships drifting out of alignment. Multiple units requesting permission to retreat. Denied. Talek barked. You will not disgrace the Empire. But the bridge crew saw what he didn't want to admit. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. The Revenant wasn't overpowering them. It was dragging them into a storm of their own rigidity. This is impossible, an officer whispered. How can one human craft? Because they refuse to fear limits, Talek snapped. That's what makes them dangerous. The officer stared. Then how do we fight something like that? Talek didn't answer. He couldn't. Rhea's gambit. Rhea's breath came slow and steady. The Neuralink fed her streams of data, each movement of the enemy fleet unfolding across her awareness. Sweat gathered at her temples. Pushing the Revenant this hard strained her beyond anything she trained for. But she wasn't here to win. She was here to break Talek's illusion of control. Target lock in progress, the Revenant's targeting AI announced. Rhea smirked. Let's ruin their evening. She loaded a kinetic rod, long, slender, wrapped in an electromagnetic sheath, and angled toward the heart of the remaining formation. A battleship attempted to reposition, but she dipped below it. Her rod launched, streaking ahead like a silent comet. The impact cracked the battleship's armor, sending molten beams of ruptured alloy into space. Fires blossomed beneath its hull. Another shard of Imperial order fell away. The Imperial fracture. Talek stared at the cascading destruction. His fleet, his perfectly drilled armada, looked like a wounded beast staggering beneath a predator that shouldn't exist. Grand Marshal, the adjutant said quietly, dread thick in his voice. Your orders? Talek exhaled through clenched teeth. Behind his eyes burned humiliation, rage, and something he hadn't felt in a century. Doubt. Rally all units, he said. Prepare annihilation beams. We will cleanse this phantom. Sir, the officer warned. Firing those beams near our own ships risks catastrophic chain reactions. Then pray we hit the human before that happens, Talek snapped. The order went fleet-wide. Rhea saw the spikes on her sensors and grimaced. That's insane. They'll vaporize half their own fleet. She steadied her breathing. Let's make sure they miss. She braced herself. The Empire was done being cautious. And the Revenant had just survived its last easy moment. The Hellion frontier trembled under the weight of Imperial fire. From orbit, the colonies below watched the distant flash of beams and explosions, unsure whether to cheer or flee. But Rhea Calder didn't see civilians. She saw numbers, angles, probabilities, the chaos of 400 warships pressed into a tightening noose. Inside the cockpit of the Revenant, her hands danced across the controls with precision only Neuralink interface could allow. The craft pulsed around her like a living organism, responding to thought before muscle. But even the Revenant had limits. Warning indicators flashed red, hull integrity dropping. Engine temperature rising. Micro-warp capacitors overheating. Systems are maxed, the onboard AI warned. Its tone was clinical, devoid of fear. Continued exertion risks catastrophic failure. Rhea didn't flinch. Catastrophe is fine, as long as it's theirs, she muttered. Her eyes flicked across the HUD. Imperial formation was repairing itself faster than she anticipated. Talek's discipline wasn't broken yet. The Grand Marshal was learning. And that made him dangerous. Imperial command, panic and pride. Report! Talek demanded, watching his officers sweat in the face of human audacity. Wing Delta's captain spoke first. Sir, the intruder is approaching the outer fleet. Micro-warp bursts destabilize our targeting solutions. Multiple ships have lost coordination. Talek's expression darkened. Then tighten formation. Delta and Gamma will hold the perimeter. Zeta, flank the outer edge. Do not let it escape. An officer hesitated. Sir, its speed is unmatched. Even if we box it, it will breach our interior defenses. Talek's glare could silence stars. Then we adapt. Humans are dangerous because they are unpredictable. We are the Empire. We do not adapt, we command. Execute. The officer nodded, swallowing his fear. Talek turned away from the viewport, fingers clenched against the railing. For the first time in decades, a human presence made him question the absoluteness of his command. Rhea's gambit intensifies. Rhea's fingers hovered over the kinetic rod launcher. The Revenant weaved through a lattice of ships, each move calculated, yet unpredictable enough to avoid Imperial tracking algorithms. A battleship twisted, preparing to unleash its main cannons, but she wasn't there. She dropped below it, tilted and fired. The rods streaked like liquid lightning, striking the ship's propulsion core. Sparks erupted, and the vessel spun helplessly into the void. She laughed softly, a brief, human sound amidst cosmic violence. Come on, show me your best. Talek's fleet reacted immediately. Dreadnoughts turned, annihilation beams converged on her last known location. Their combined energy could vaporize any known vessel in seconds. Rhea's Neuralink pulsed. Probability matrices flooded her vision. She calculated the beam's angles, factoring in time dilation from microwarp bursts, and accelerated. The Revenant flickered, almost disappearing to sensors. She emerged directly behind the nearest dreadnought. Phase jump? She whispered. The craft shivered, engines straining beyond rated capacity. She phased past the ship's shields, releasing a pulse that overloaded the dreadnought's weapon matrix. Sparks and fire danced across the hull. Its firing sequence collapsed. Talek's adjutant cried out. Sir! They're losing dreadnoughts faster than anticipated. Talek's eyes narrowed. Contain the breach! Focus fire! The strain shows. Back in the Revenant cockpit, alarms screamed. Heat shields glowed orange. The Neuralink strained against her nervous system. The craft groaned, its hull integrity dropping to critical levels. Every system pushed to the limit threatened to fail. Come on, Rhea muttered, sweat rolling down her temple. We're almost there. She knew one mistake could destroy both pilot and prototype. The Empire wouldn't just react, they would adapt, and once Talek understood the Revenant's movement patterns, humanity would have no advantage. Yet fear sharpened her focus. Adrenaline sharpened every thought, every reflex. Humans weren't strong because they were invincible. They were dangerous because they were willing to bleed to win. Empire counteroffensive. Talek's voice thundered through the fleet. Focus beams on vectors predicted from extrapolated escape paths. Do not allow it to cross into the inner formation. But the Revenant was already where they didn't anticipate it. Sensor echoes lagged, beams overshot, and a newly constructed cruiser misfired on an ally. The Empire's perfection began to unravel. Sir, casualties are rising, an officer warned. We are losing control. Talek's hand tightened on the railing. For decades, he had relied on predictability. Now, unpredictability shattered that reliance. This human will pay, he growled. Even if we burn the fleet to cinders. The Ghost Lance set up. Rhea's HUD highlighted a single target, the Imperial flagship, Vindicator. Destroying it would cripple the fleet's coordination. But the Revenant was already critical. Attempting a frontal assault would mean certain destruction. Time for the Ghost Lance, she said. A classified maneuver, never tested in real combat. Neuralink systems, hull resonance, and micro-warp conduits would allow the Revenant to phase through matter momentarily, like ghosting through solid steel. One shot, one chance. She aligned the craft, adjusting micro-warp vectors. Imperial beams converged on her position, fire flowers blooming across the void. She felt the craft shudder violently, systems screaming. "This is it," Rhea whispered. "One moment to change everything. The critical choice." Talek watched the tactical map. "Lock onto it. Annihilate it before it reaches the flagship." His officers hesitated. The human craft's erratic movements made prediction impossible. Each command they issued fell behind its actions like a shadow chasing the sun. Inside the Revenant, Rhea's Neuralink pulsed. Hull stress at 92%, engine output at 97%, thermal flux exceeding safe limits. One miscalculation and the Revenant would tear itself apart. Yet she didn't falter. "For the colonies," she whispered. "For Earth." She activated the Ghost Lance sequence. Light and space warped, the HUD flickered violently, and the Revenant disappeared from the Imperial scanners. Talek roared, slamming the console. Where did it go?" The calm before the strike. Rhea's vision tunneled. Sensors returned fragmented, distorted yet functional. She was inside the Vindicator's shielding envelope. Structural stress screamed warnings. The flagship's weapons aimed unknowingly in the wrong direction. For a heartbeat, the human pilot had the advantage. "Systems critical," the AI reported. "Hull integrity failing. Recommend extraction." "Not yet," Rhea said. "Time to make a statement." She maneuvered with precision, striking internal conduits and weapon systems with electromagnetic bursts. Sparks and fire crawled across the flagship's interior. Alarms blared as crew members scrambled in confusion. The Empire's most perfect machine was suddenly vulnerable. Foreshadowing the finale. Back on the bridge, Talek's expression shifted from fury to disbelief. He realized the scale of human unpredictability. One craft had penetrated his flagship. The Empire's order was fracturing. Discipline alone would not save them. The Revenant's system strained, but Rhea had achieved her goal. The Grand Marshal now feared the very species he had dismissed. Humanity had bled for the first time in battle, and the galaxy was taking notice. Rhea aligned the craft, ready to exit after her. Strike. Her eyes scanned the battlefield, calculating the next impossible move. She knew the Empire would retaliate, harder, faster, and with more cruelty. But for now, the Revenant had survived. For now, she had rewritten the rules. The frontier colonies watched the distant flashes and wondered, could one human craft truly stand against 400 ships? Rhea smiled inside the cockpit. One human craft had done more than stand. It had shattered the Empire's confidence. And this was only the beginning. The Vindicator shuddered, the core alarms screaming like a chorus of dying stars. Grand Marshal Talek stood at the viewport, gripping the railing, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Every sensor screamed a single undeniable truth. The human craft had breached the inner sanctum of his fleet. One pilot. One Revenant. And the Empire's perfection was unraveling. "Sir," the adjutant said quietly, almost afraid to speak. They are inside the flagship." Talek's jaw tightened. "Impossible. Nothing can penetrate the shield envelope. Nothing. And yet, it has." A red warning pulse blinked across the tactical map. The Revenant's presence was inside the Vindicator's internal schematics. It was phasing through bulkheads, bypassing armor, appearing where sensors had no right to detect it. Talek's breathing grew shallow. He had faced countless rebellions, alien uprisings, even entire star systems, and yet this human, felt different. Uncontainable. Rhea's strike. Inside the Revenant, Rhea felt the hull vibrate violently as it adapted to the phasing sequence. The micro-warp conduits screamed. The Neuralink pulsed like a heartbeat. She had one chance to dismantle the flagship from within. One chance. "Systems critical," the onboard AI warned. "Hull failure imminent." "Not now," Rhea muttered, overriding the alert. "We finish this." She targeted the flagship's command core, a lattice of quantum circuits and structural conduits that governed fleet-wide coordination. One pulse could cripple the Vindicator, and cascade through the entire fleet. Rhea's fingers danced across the controls. The Revenant phased through solid steel, twisting through corridors and conduits faster than the eye could follow. Sparks and fire erupted along the hull, crew alarms blaring in every accessible channel. The Grand Marshal's most trusted officers had no idea what was happening. "Commander?" the AI asked. "Recommendation, retreat." "No," Rhea said. "We finish what we started." She triggered a series of electromagnetic pulses directly into the command matrix. Screens flickered. Weapons locked, then failed. Navigation arrays fractured. For the first time in decades, the Empire's flagship was vulnerable. Talek confronted. Talek's console flashed red. He realized, with horror, that the intruder was moving inside his flagship, striking precisely where it mattered. He stormed to the communication channel, demanding a status report. "Grand Marshal," the lead officer stammered, "we are compromised. Systems failing. Hull breaches internal." Talek slammed his fist against the railing. "Impossible! Humans cannot penetrate the envelope." "They did," the officer said quietly. "One craft. One pilot. And they've disabled everything." Talek's fury and disbelief collided. He had believed himself invincible. He had commanded fleets that crushed worlds. And yet one human had shattered his doctrine, his pride, and his fleet's heart. He growled, voice low and dangerous. "Then we will adapt. Nothing survives humans, unless it dies trying." The Ghost Lance. Rhea's pulse surged. She had completed the first stage of the Ghost Lance maneuver, inside the flagship, dismantling the command core. Now came the final act, phasing through the ship entirely, striking at the nexus of its power systems, and exiting before the hull collapsed. Her hands were steady. She aligned the Revenant for one final microwarp burst, calculating every trajectory, every pulse of the flagship's internal energy fields. She exhaled slowly. "Time to leave a mark." The Revenant surged forward. Light bent unnaturally around it. Sensors aboard the Vindicator screamed confusion. Systems overloaded. And then, with a single pulse, the human craft phased completely through the flagship, releasing a concentrated burst of electromagnetic energy. The command core erupted. Panels blew outward. Control arrays melted in glowing rivulets. Alarms screamed as the ship convulsed, losing all cohesion. Talek staggered back, eyes wide. The flagship shuddered violently. He watched his fleet's central nerve die. Thousands of soldiers and officers were cut off from command. Orders failed. Battleships collided. Dreadnoughts fired blindly. The Empire falls into chaos. "Sir, the fleet," an officer whispered. "Without the flagship's coordination, we're falling apart." Talek felt his chest tighten. Pride and fury warred inside him. He had believed the Empire untouchable, invincible. And yet here it was, teetering on the edge of collapse because of one human pilot. The Revenant appeared on sensors briefly, flickering like a ghost. Then it vanished again. "Seal the hull!" Talek roared. "Deploy boarding crews! I will personally destroy that craft!" But he knew deep down the truth. One human craft had shown him the unthinkable. The Empire's perfection could be broken. Rhea escapes. Rhea's cockpit glowed with system warnings. Hull integrity at 7%. Engine output unstable. Neuralink flashing critical. She didn't hesitate. The Revenant's final micro-warp skip disengaged the craft from the flagship entirely, ejecting her into open space just as the Vindicator began to rupture. The explosion illuminated the battlefield, a blossom of fire and energy visible across thousands of kilometers. Imperial cruisers spun in panic. Destroyers collided. The once perfect formation was a mangled, fractured shell of its former self. Rhea exhaled, wiping sweat from her brow. She had survived. The Revenant had survived. And the Empire had learned, in the most humiliating way, why humans were not to be underestimated. Aftermath. From the colonies below, miners and settlers watched the distant spectacle, hearts pounding. A single human craft had stood against 400 warships and emerged victorious. Word would spread faster than light itself. Talek, wounded in pride and shaken in command, barely survived the flagship's explosion. He stared at the tactical display in disbelief. One pilot had proven the unthinkable. Humans could outthink, outmaneuver, and outfight the most disciplined fleet in the galaxy. He gritted his teeth. "Do not provoke Earth," he whispered, voice trembling. "Humans do not fight, they annihilate." Humanity triumphant. Rhea returned to the frontier colonies, Revenant battered but intact. The people cheered, though most didn't understand exactly what had happened. They only knew one thing: humans had won. Not with numbers. Not with brute force. But with cunning, audacity, and the unwillingness to bow to fear. Rhea stepped from the cockpit, her uniform scorched and torn. She surveyed the colonists, tired but alive. "Today," she said, voice steady, "we showed them that humans are not prey. We are predators." The frontier erupted in applause. Behind her, the Revenant glowed faintly, systems still alive, ready for the next impossible mission. Somewhere in the galaxy, Talek licked the wounds of his pride, vowing revenge. But for now, humanity had carved its mark into the stars. And the Empire trembled.